What's up, anime crew? Coming at you guys with a quick rant about Oshi no Ko, because after releasing my Bocchi the Rock rant, I reminded myself that I was planning on ranting about every anime I finish, since that Ranking of Kings rant I did a long time ago. And I was like, oh crap, I finished Oshi no Ko, but I never made a second channel video about it. I only made a really mediocre main channel video about it. So I figured I'd just try to rant and get my more holistic thoughts on the show out. Of the two rants I've done so far, this one's probably going to be more positive than Ranking of Kings, but more negative than Bocchi the Rock. Definitely more negative than Bocchi the Rock. That shit was gold. But I'll just get right into it. Oshi no Ko is a show that I have seen both seasons of. It is a very high visual quality. It has a lot of polish to it, and that shines through especially during like the hyper detailed frames. There's that one frame from the end of the first episode movie thing. I'm sure we all remember, and then it shows like Kana in that same frame. Like sometimes they will go all out and do a hyper detailed frame, which is really nice and really interesting. Because usually when I see stuff like that in anime, it's from like older shows, like with that were cell animated and had a little bit more of a grittier style with a lot more pronounced line art and stuff like that. But yeah, no, definitely some interesting stuff going on with the visuals. I hear that the eyes were like so detailed that animators were like dropping dead in the streets or something. So that's definitely interesting. It showed through. Another thing I'd like to commend about the presentation of this show is that every character has constant outfit changes, like every single scene. And there are recurring motifs to their outfits. They actually have, a consistent sense of style and continuity in that sense throughout the show, but they really went all out making every character have like a new, actually good looking outfit for essentially every episode, if not every scene. That was awesome. There have been a few cool instances of like crafty and unique directorial work. I remember some stuff from the first episode as well as from the first few episodes of season 2. There was that one shot where Kana was at like the first rehearsal and she was acting with that really talented actor guy, I forget his name, and he like pretended to hit her with his blade, and then like it like cuts the screen down the middle a little bit and it shows like half of her face in character and then the other half of her face just like in the rehearsal what it actually looks like, and she's like taken aback by it. It's like a very beautiful moment where she reconnects with her passion for acting briefly, and it's very interesting. It's very cool. I think the only things that I'm not like huge on with the presentation are that, I mean, this is a bit of a nitpick because it's just the lack of having another positive, but I would say it's not the most kinetic show. Like there's not a ton of movement. You're not going to see like any insane showcases of fluidity of animation unless they are in short bursts or, they're dedicated to the performances or something like that. On a scene-to-scene basis, there's not going to be like a whole lot happening. There is going to be a lot of talking, but honestly, they do such a good job with painting the scenes and doing the character designs and giving them new outfits, making everything look so pretty and so polished that it doesn't really matter that much. It's just something that I noticed because, I try to be critical about this kind of thing for some reason. And other than that, the visual style definitely reminds me of like idol culture, you know what I mean? Like I feel like it fits the show very well. I like how it gets a little bit grittier and fucked up sometimes because that reflects the tone of the show pretty well. And yeah, I would say overall I was pretty visually impressed by it. The story as well, there are tons of really good instances of character writing. Kana is like occasionally thrust into a very like tropey position of just being like a tsundere, which is really annoying. But other than that, her character is extremely interesting. There's a lot going on. She has a lot of interesting dynamics, like her dynamic with Aqua, her dynamic with Akane, with Ruby, with Memcho. Like everybody she has unique dynamics with, and she has a character with like captivating psychology that I think is insightful to things that actually go down in the industry, which is kind of the show's mission statement, to inform people about stuff that happens in the entertainment industry that they might not know about in the form of an incredibly entertaining and like hyper dramatic show. So I think that was really awesome. I really like what they did with Akane as well. Akane was probably my favorite character. same thing. The dynamic between Kana and Akane, where they're both like competing for stage presence, but they're also competing for like the same guy, and also at the same time, Akane actually wants to bring the best out of Kana, because she like inspired her when she was younger, and they have history with each other, and there's just like a ton of interesting stuff going on there with that dynamic in particular, and it seems to be developing even further. Very, very interesting stuff. When it comes to the main characters, the main two, I wouldn't say we're taking a hit in terms of the psychology on display, but rather that I just didn't like their personalities. Like, I wouldn't find them to be likable, charismatic people in real life. Like, Ruby strikes me as, at this point in the series, she actually shows a decent amount of promise in becoming more interesting. She strikes me as pretty much the generic female anime protagonist. You know, she's a little bit, I hate using the word bratty, but like a little bit bratty, I guess. She is, you know, overall pretty optimistic, pretty wide-eyed, and pretty good-natured, and just has a dream that she really wants to follow, even though she's not super socially adept or anything like that, and she's just, you know, trying to make it work. She can be a little awkward and clumsy, but, you know, that's just kind of how her personality is, and she has a heart of gold, which, you know, I guess doesn't really give enough credit to her slightly more unhinged tendencies, but I suppose that's because they're just a little bit dwarfed by the sheer insanity of the rest of the cast. So you just you don't remember them as much, but I guess they're definitely there. What I didn't love about Ruby's character, I guess, was the fact that when I saw that first episode, and there is the plot conceit of the main two characters being like reincarnated as the children of their favorite idol, I was extremely interested in like the psychology of that. Like, how are they gonna grow up a second time? How is like having to keep this a secret going to mess with them? How are they going to grapple with the fact that they knew each other in a past life? How are they going to grapple with the sense of like body horror that comes from being placed into a baby's body that they can barely maneuver? They got into that a little bit with Ruby and what was the main girl? In the first episode, but they kind of like let it stop there, and that was a little bit disappointing. I was hoping there'd be a little bit more like sci-fi, like weird, messed up stuff going on there, and character development on that front. But that's just not the series. That's not the direction the series decided to take, and you know that's fine. But I was hoping they'd go a little bit more into that. Right now, they're kind of sitting on it and like waiting for it to be like a big reveal later on. You know, they don't want to blow all their big reveals, but it's not the most satisfying thing to see play out, because there have been a couple scenes teasing like, oh yeah, Aqua and Ruby sure do have a lot of coincidences. Like, oh yeah, they almost know that they knew each other in a past life. They almost know that they were important to each other, but they just don't. And they're playing this game where they're both a little bit clueless, and only you as the audience know. And I've never understood this storytelling technique, because it just pisses me off. Like, I remember when I was younger, I was watching Rugrats, and there was some sort of episode where, because they were babies, they weren't able to, and I'm pretty sure this is a fairly common plot point in Rugrats episodes, I'm not the expert, but they would, like, be being screwed over by the main girl, Angela, or whatever, like, really bad, and they wouldn't be able to tell the parents. They'd be trying to tell their parents that, like, hey, we're getting screwed over by this mean girl over here, but they couldn't, because they were babies, and nobody could understand. I remember just being so pissed off by it, like, disproportionately so. I know that's supposed to establish a sense of conflict, but, like, I just sit there, like, mildly unamused and mildly pissed off the whole time. Like, I just hate being strung along when I already know the conclusion that's going to happen. I know they're going to find out that they know each other, and I know that's going to recontextualize their relationship later, but it's like, why are we edging so much? You know what I mean? Like, can we just get to the bottom of this and let all the more interesting character dynamics like flow? There was a lot of interesting stuff being set up in the first episode, for example, about terminal illness and illness in general, like losing control of your body, you know, like basically slowly dying, not having a future, like a lot of stuff like that. And they sort of just moved away from it and went into a little bit more of like an edutainment piece on the industry, I guess, and then a little bit of a psych thriller as well, like a murder mystery with a edgy protagonist. And I just don't know. I didn't love the direction that the story took, because I felt a little bit teased by the first episode, but you know, that's a pretty minor critique. other than that, Aqua, I made a whole video about him. It's not really worth watching because it's pretty mediocre, but on his face, he's just like the least likable anime protagonist archetype I can think of, where he's just like the edgy brooder who doesn't let people get too close, but it's actually because he knows a lot and he's a bit emotionally closed off, and every girl instantly falls madly in love with him despite the fact that he is extremely uncharismatic and doesn't put himself out there at all. He just happens to be like super talented, and he knows stuff that other people don't, and he doesn't tell them stuff for their own good, and he just can't open up, but it's because he's a little bit jaded and a badass, and he's kind of stoic. But it's like they're slowly breaking that down. I really just personally don't get a lot out of like his edgier moments of like 5D chess, being a epic gamer, and like sleuthing his way into like finding out who his mom's killer was and stuff like that. Like, I just personally don't enjoy that kind of thing, and it was kind of pissing me off. But I can't actually say that his character isn't being written in a way that is interesting, true to life in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like this type of person exists. The suspension of disbelief comes from the fact that every girl he ever meets falls in love with him. But it's like, yes, this makes sense. This is an interesting place to take this character. He's grappling with his guilt. He was a doctor in his past life. He clearly has a great deal of... He's a fan, like he wants to help other people. He was a doctor, and then he was a very dedicated fan, and even now in his new life, despite the fact that he's been given an extraordinary chance at fame because he was a child with the body, he was a child with the brain of an adult. He had like exceptional opportunities everywhere, but he still just wants to support other people that he cares about, and that's sort of why he doesn't want to open up as much. It's all like intertwined, and it's very interesting. But I wish his edgy personality wouldn't get in the way so much. It just makes for so many cringy moments. But overall, like, even though him and Ruby as well are not personally to my taste, I can still respect what the writer is doing with the characters. It's just a little bit of an awkward one for me, I guess. It's a show that's mission statement more than anything, despite the fact that it's a really good story, with a couple of funny moments. It's a story that educates the viewer on the darker side of the entertainment industry, as well as a little bit more of an optimistic view on the entertainment industry sometimes. And in that sense, I feel that it can be a bit instructional at times. The first example that comes to mind is when they go to the dressing room and they're like, essentially turning to the camera and breaking the fourth wall and being like, just totally breaking up the scene to be like, so many of the dressing rooms for idols in Japan are actually extremely cramped, and many of them will be dressing up together and they will do a bunch of blah, 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 blah. It just like kind of info dumps the true reality of the industry, like just fun facts, and it like pauses the story to do so. It's not really worked in with any sort of subtlety. It's kind of just like they turn to the camera and are like, hey, by the way, did you know that many idol groups actually form behind the scene? Like, just, I don't know, like a bunch of random stuff. I don't really remember much of it. And while I do appreciate feeling like I'm learning something watching an anime, I felt like it did kind of take away from the story a little bit and like the pacing of it. Once again, I just have a lot of nitpicks about this series, I suppose. Like, there were also quite a few moments where it's like trying to be educational about the nature of the industry, but then it'll just have like moments of just like insane cartoonishness. Like, I think about Akane, when Akane like just like somehow 5D chessed her way into being like, oh, well, you can see in the countenance of Aqua and her behaviors that she was clearly molested as a child. I'm like, what? How did we get here? You were like looking at some pictures, dude. And like, then she's like, you know what? This is it. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to kill myself. And then like, she's like literally about to jump, and then Aqua saves her like at the last second. Like, it could be a little bit goofy from time to time. Despite the fact that it's also like really serious. It didn't totally work for me on that front. And the last negative I want to get out of the way is that I didn't love I guess my complaints of the show boiled down to the fact that I felt a little bit teased. Like, it establishes, especially in season 2, a very meta story where it's actors inside of an anime. So it's a TV show inside of a TV show, and that was a consistent thing throughout both seasons. But it sucks because I don't feel like they did very much interesting with it. They didn't get very meta with it other than just turning to the camera and being like, well, you see, manga writers are often not very involved in the actual live action adaptations of their play. You know, I don't really care that much. I don't care enough to like have to pause the story to get into this. I wish there was a little bit more going on with like the story within the story itself. Like I wish it was a little bit more interesting and there were some like cool allegories for the actual characters themselves, and there were a couple that were mostly a little bit surface level, but I was just hoping that it would be something that's like really deep that I could sink my teeth into, and I didn't really find that, despite the fact that, once again, the psychology of these characters is really well done and really interesting, and the show has a ton of polish. There are like glimpses of like really, really, really interesting directorial stuff happening, and on top of all of that, it's actually pretty funny. It's reasonably well paced. A lot happens. The dialogue is good. It just has a lot going for it very straightforwardly. And I have quite a few more specific nitpicks, a lot of which are totally personal. Like what I was saying earlier about the dramatic irony. I mean, I can't think of a more personal and subjective critique, even when considering that all criticism is entirely subjective. Like, it's just something that I didn't necessarily vibe with as much as a lot of other people did. But, I mean, hey, it was still really good. I don't know, maybe like a strong 7 for me, light 8. I was pretty negative in this review, but at the end of the day, I was very impressed by all the stuff that matters most, which are the visuals and the character interactions. So there were some really awesome dynamics in here, and I did honestly like learning about the industry a little bit. I liked the classic anime tone shifts. It's just, there was a bit too much edge for me in both senses. Like, I felt a little bit edged, like they were pretending the story's going to go in a direction where it doesn't actually go, or they're like waiting forever to actually take it there. And also I felt edged in the sense that it was just edgy, and I didn't really like it that much in that sense. But at the end of the day, there's a reason I finished all 25 episodes. It was really solid. I overall thoroughly enjoyed my time with the show, and I feel like it's good in a very straightforward manner. But yeah, that's about everything.